All right. Good morning, Heidi. Let's get started, everyone. Thanks for being with us this morning. Dave Severance here. Glad to have you back with us again. We're here to talk about something that you may not think very much about in your office work every day or being successful in the business every day, but it really is a key piece of the success that you can achieve in your work. And maybe you heard some hints of this in what Ben was talking about earlier in the week. That is habits. We're going to be focusing our attention on these little things that actually do add up to make a difference in our lives. We'll want to talk about how conscious we are of the habits that we have, whether the habits that we have actually work for us or against us in our work, and try to bring a greater awareness as to the importance of ordinary little habits in the success that we can experience. So let me start by asking you a couple of questions. My first question is, how many of you can think of a habit that you have that's probably getting in the way of your being successful in your work? I'll ask it again because it's really important. How many of you can think of a habit that you might have that may actually be preventing you from being more successful? I'd like to ask a couple people to come off mute and just tell us, what is that habit that you think you have, even though it works against you? I'll give you one example. Like maybe one example would be your habit is, as soon as you sit down to work, you open up your email and you start answering all the emails. And before you know it, 4 hours have gone by and you haven't actually done any of the things that you wanted to get done today because you've been so caught up in the communication stuff. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just as an example. So let's hear from a couple of you, please. Please come off mute and tell us, what's a habit that you have that you realize when you think about it is maybe getting in your way?
I have that habit.
Luciana, please.
Yes, every day I try not to look, but I look at my emails and if I'm doing something and I see, if I go into my email to do something and then I see a bunch of emails, I can't do anything before I go through those emails and delete or do whatever. And then I start doing something else that was not supposed to. So I waste a lot of time with these.
Thank you. That's a very common one. A lot of people experience it at one time or another. I'd like to hear one or two others. It's really important for us to spend a minute thinking about this, because being aware of the habits, the behaviors that we engage in on a regular basis, especially the ones that may be hurting us, is really crucial to our success. So let's hear from another person, please. What's a habit that you have that you realize gets in your way?
I could say something. So, well, I don't know if it's a regular habit. Like, it's not, I do it at the same time every day, but if someone needs help with something, they call me or whatever, I will always stop what I'm doing to help them. Yep. I will sideline my projects to help with their project instead. And it's like, in theory, a nice thing to do, but I don't think putting myself on the back burner all the time is probably the best for my business.
Got it. Thank you. That's another great example, Allie. Maybe a lot of us have found ourselves in that position at one time or another. We'll call that a habit for today, even though it's not a habit in the way perhaps some others are. But the fact that you actually make that choice, perhaps unconsciously, like if your regular MO is somebody needs me, I'm just going to help, no matter what else is going on. It could be that sometimes that's working against success in your business. Absolutely. All right, I'd like to pull up a few slides so we can think a little bit more about it. Let me see what Jessica's saying. Not having one specific workplace to focus, too many working vignettes. Okay, great. So that could be something that, we'll talk about today, because one of the points that we want to make is about designing your work environment to stimulate the right kinds of habits. And if you don't have a usable, effective workspace for you, then that's something you'll want to develop. Absolutely. Okay, so let me pull this up. A couple things we want to say. Okay, I want to make sure this slide advances today. Can everybody see the title slide? Using Atomic Habits to Grow Your Business. Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do today is use a couple of comments from there's two really good books that you can read that I think you should read at some point in your career, sooner rather than later, so that you can bring a little bit more discipline and skill to managing habits. The first one is called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, D-U-H-I-G-G. It's easily available on Amazon. The other one that you can read, both of them are really good. This one's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm going to take some of the points that come out of the Atomic Habits book today, not because I think it's better. It's just simply here's some ones that I think are some good introductory ones for you to think about. There's so much stuff in both of these books that there's far too much for us to think about in one session or even 4 or 5. But if you have an interest after hearing today's conversation, let us know. I could perhaps put together a series that's a little bit more complete on this really important topic. So let's talk a little bit about habits. When we think about habits, we think of them as these little things we do, like you typically walk into the house and maybe you throw your keys on the table by the front door, and then you hang up your coat in the closet, and then you go into the kitchen or whatever you do, and you don't even think about it. But what we want to understand is when we talk about systems and processes in our business, we talk about that a lot here at CSC. Systems and processes at their heart are simply a series of habits. When you think about the fundamental thing that makes up a system, it's really a bunch of habits. For example, let's say you have a customer relationship tracking system. You have this tool called a CRM. But the CRM, to be effective, requires you to get in there and keep it up to date on a regular basis. So if you have bad habits regarding your CRM, guess what? Your system for keeping track of who your clients are, what they care about, how you've interacted with them, system breaks down. If you have a system for bringing clients into your business that includes making 5 phone calls a day, or following up with warm leads, or doing some kind of marketing or something like that, if you stop any of those regular practices, your habits for bringing new people into your business also breaks down. So it's important for us to remember that when we talk about systems and processes, what we're really talking about is good habits. So what is a habit? For our purposes in this conversation, let's just define it this way: a behavior that's been repeated enough times to become automatic. And so when we're thinking about a habit, it's something that we regularly do. And in doing it over and over again, it becomes something that becomes easier for us to do. And it allows us to become more efficient over time because our brain doesn't need to be used for anything active during that particular habit in the way that it might be if we're doing something for the first time. And so even though a lot of habits, like let's say keeping your CRM up to date or making calls, do require some conscious attention, it's not the same as figuring out something for the first time. And so habits can, yes.
Sorry, but the slides are not moving.
Oh, don't tell me. Thank you for telling me. I had
You're
the same
welcome.
problem last week.
Yeah.
Okay, let me come out of this. Can you see the slide now? If I advance to...
Yes, yes.
Okay. Not sure what's going on here with this. I had the same problem last week. I apologize. We'll see if we can work on the tech for next week. Okay, so a habit that's been repeated enough times allows us to do it without as much conscious thought and intention as we would normally use. That frees up our brain to do other things. And so if it's as simple as, for example, walking in the door, throwing your keys on the table, hanging up your coat, and then walking into the kitchen, you can actually be thinking about something else while you do all those things, because you've done them 1,000 times and you don't even think about it. We want to be able to build useful habits for us in our business so that we can repeat them without having to tie up all of our mental energy and mental capability and still get things done. So let's talk a little bit about how James Clear sees habits. He has a very simple framework for habits, and he calls it the habit loop. There's 4 parts to it: the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. What he's saying is, in our lives, when we have habits that are regular habits for us, whether they're good or bad, they all include these 4 parts. There's the cue part. The cue is an experience or an action or something that triggers your brain to initiate some kind of behavior. For example, let's say you walk into a bar and you see everybody else with a drink in their hand and they're all laughing and having a good time. It becomes a trigger for you to say, oh, I'd like to have a drink now. If you were just in the shower, you might not think, oh, I have to have a drink now. But when you walk into the bar and you see everybody else holding the drink, having a good time, laughing, enjoying themselves, that becomes a particular cue that triggers a behavior that you might engage in automatically. You might not even think about it, right? necessarily walk into the bar and say, let me think for 10 minutes whether I want a drink or not. As soon as you walk into the bar, you're like, hey, yeah, let me grab a drink and say hello to somebody. And so the cue is something that you experience that triggers you to do some kind of a thing. And this is important. We'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. Second, this ties to a craving. A craving is a desire to change something that you experience right now. That is, to move yourself from where you are to where you'd like to be. So it could be, for example, that you, putting this together with a cue, let's say that you saw a list of agents in your region ranked by GCI, and you see yourself down near the bottom of that list. Maybe that cue might trigger a craving in you to say, I don't want to be at the bottom of this list. I'd like to be at the top of this list. The number that I'd like to hit is way up there. The number where I am is here. And so this craving represents a gap between where you'd like to be or who you'd like to be and where you are right now. Those two form what he calls the problem side of the loop. The solution side of the loop is response and reward. The response is, okay, so what is the action here, or what is the thought or the mindset that's the habitual one that helps us get to where we want to go? And finally, getting to where we want to go is the reward that we want to experience. And so it's been said that actually we don't necessarily want the behavior itself. We want what the behavior gets us. Right? We may not want to, let's say, update our CRM every day, but we want to have really good information about our clients so that we can get more clients or serve them better. And it results in, let's say, higher GCI or more houses sold, something like that. So these four pieces make up the loop that James Clear calls the habit loop. They're all important. They all have their own role in this process. We're going to talk just about the kind of early part of this process, the cue stuff and the craving a little bit today, because we don't have time to go through everything. How do we create good habits? Well, the most fundamental law, he kind of lists 4 laws. The first law that he talks about is making our habits more visible or keeping them front of mind. Essentially, what he's saying is, we all have many, many habits in our lives. You know, you get up, maybe you brush your teeth, then you take a shower, and you put on your makeup or whatever you do in the bathroom. That's your routine. You don't think about it. These are normal habits that you go through every day. Some of them may be good for us. Some of them may not be good for us. What he's saying here is the first step in being effective with your habits is bringing a more conscious awareness of what they are and what they should be to your everyday thinking. Because if we're always acting on autopilot, we may be engaging in a whole lot of habits that aren't good for us. For example, did you ever get stressed out and you felt this urge to eat? And you felt this urge to eat probably something that's not healthy for you? A lot of us will say, gosh, when I'm really freaked out, I just got to grab a whole thing of ice cream and I'll just eat the whole pint, or I'll eat 2 pints of ice cream or something. Maybe it's not a healthy choice, but it's a habit that we have. And so for us to be effective with our habits, the first thing we want to do is make sure that we're bringing a little bit more conscious awareness to what the habits are. And so there's 4 steps in here. First thing you can do is fill out the habits scorecard. The habits scorecard is something that he's developed that's available to everybody. And I will put a link to it in the chat box here in just a moment. The habits scorecard is simply a scorecard that you can use that will help you identify the habits that you have and whether you consider them to be pluses or minuses, that is, helpful or harmful to you. And the way he defines helpful or harmful is pretty interesting. He says the way you should think about whether a habit is helpful or harmful is, does this habit help me to become the person I want to be? Or does this habit help me experience the identity that I would like to have for myself and experience for myself? In other words, is it bringing me closer to the person that I ideally want to be? And so I'll put it up for you and you guys can download it and take a look at it later on. But the first point of this is to bring some conscious awareness to what it is that you're currently doing and thinking about which of those habits may be ones that you want to keep and which ones that you may not want to keep. As we say, growth always begins with awareness. And so the first thing here is to understand what your habits are, not just business habits, but any habits in your life. Second thing he talks about are implementation intentions. These are very clear and specific statements about what you would like a habit to be. So for example, many of us might say, I'd like to be better at managing my CRM. Or I'd like to be better at making my calls, my daily calls. or I would like to be better at handling objections. For him, those are not habits. That's not an implementation intention. That's just a general wish. It's just a general desire. What he wants to encourage us to do is get really specific about what we need to do to have the result that we want. So he would like us to write down something like, I will make 5 calls at 8 a.m. from my desk every morning. Behavior, time, and location. If we're not clear enough to identify a specific behavior, a time we'll do it, and where we'll be when we'll do it, and perhaps how as well, that's fine, then we're never going to get there. Part of the practice of good habits is being very specific and clear about what the habit is. Now, this is separate from motivation. It's just simply about identifying what the habit needs to be. And most people fail in their habits because they're not specific and clear enough about what they should be. 2 other things that he recommends, which I think are really useful, is what he calls habit stacking. Habit stacking is when we tie a particular habit that we would like to initiate and tag it along with a habit that we already have. So for example, let's say that your routine is you get up in the morning, you turn on the shower, you have a shower, and then you get clean, you get out of the shower, and your habit stack in that particular case is you brush your teeth, you put in your contacts, you do your makeup, you brush your hair, and then you walk out. You've got 4 habits there that are all part of that particular process, and they all reinforce each other because when you're standing there at the mirror, you've already brushed your teeth, you've already brushed your hair. It's natural at that point to put in your contacts or to put on your makeup. Because the habits are already stacked together, it's much more likely that the other habits will all happen because they're all happening at the same time anyway. What he's saying is add a particular habit to a habit that you already have. So for you, it could look like something like this. When I make my first cup of coffee, I'm going to sit down at my desk, drink the coffee, and update my CRM while I do that. And so if you've had trouble managing your CRM, you get to it on some days in the morning, some days in the afternoon, some days you don't get to it at all, some weeks you don't get to it at all. How can you make it more likely for you to perhaps add that behavior to your daily routine? Stack it with something else you're already doing. So if your normal habit would be to have that cup of coffee and then just like surf online for 20 minutes, maybe that's a bad habit you have. You grab the coffee, you start surfing online, and pretty soon 45 minutes have gone by, and you've read one article about Miley Cyrus's new shirt, and you've read some other article about, I read an article the other day about the beds that they have in the Olympics that are made out of cardboard. And apparently they designed these beds so that the athletes won't have sex in them. They designed them to support 1 body weight, not 2, because of COVID restrictions. They didn't want people doing any hanky-panky after their events were over. And so they developed these cardboard beds. Okay, interesting article, doesn't necessarily help me in my business at all. Maybe I was wasting my time. Maybe you have a habit of, grabbing your cup of coffee and going online for a while when you might use that time a little bit more constructively. And so the idea of habit stacking is take a habit that you have, which is you get up, you grab that cup of coffee, instead of sitting down in front of your computer and surfing, sit down in front of your CRM and update it at that moment. That's what habit stacking is about. It's a very effective technique because you already have the other habit in place. All you need to do is add this habit. It's a helpful one. And finally, design your environment for habits. This is about setting up your environment so that it works well. And I referenced this before when there was the comment about the, not having a good place to work. There are many ways that you can set yourself up for more success in your habits simply by setting up the environment around you. For example, let's say that you would like to send out some thank you notes or some greeting cards to people and you never quite get around to it. Well, it's very easy to have a better way of doing that. Buy 100 pieces of stationery and put them right on your desk, right in front of you. You walk past that desk every single day. It's 1,000 times more likely that you're going to pick up one of those cards when you have a free moment and jot down a card to somebody. Imagine the difference between that and having it, let's say, in your closet or in some shelf or somewhere. You might never notice it. You might never think about it. A simple adjustment like that can make the difference between never sending those cards and always sending those cards. A similar example would be, let's say that you let's say that you're going to be in a wedding, or you're going to go to a wedding 2 months from today, and you want to get into this dress or this pair of pants, and you know you need to get in, lose a few pounds or whatever to get there. Imagine hanging it on your closet door where you see it every single day. You're far more likely to do the things you need to do to be able to fit into that outfit than if it was stacked in the back of your closet on the hanger rack with everything else. And so when we're talking about designing your environment for habits that work for you, we're thinking about what makes the cues most visible. By putting those stationary cards on your desk, the cue is right there. It's extremely visible. And if you don't have a visible cue, if you're not aware of what the cues are, you're never going to do the habit. So all four of these things fit together in a way that allows you to make the habits more conscious, more obvious, more front of mind. And this is the first key step in establishing a set of effective habits for you. So let me pull this down. All right, so let me put the link in here for the okay, that should be good. Okay, so there's the link you can go to later to download the habit tracker. So let's hear from a couple of you. What is one thing that you are doing, especially along one of these lines, like keeping the cue visible or habit stacking or something like that, that is helping you repeat a habit that's serving your business? Let's have a couple folks come off mute. Josh, please. What's one thing?
So I have a bad habit of one of my habits is first thing in the morning, immediately make a cup of coffee. But what I do while I drink my coffee, and often leads to just keep doing that, is I'll look at my phone, and it's like this cycle of like email, New York Times, and Instagram. And like that's can be like a long time. And like I have this mindset of like, well, that's my time. That's me time. The rest of the day is work, kids,
Right.
whatever. And like, that's my whatever. And like, that doesn't mean that like there are not better habits that I would get better rewards from ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And so my new habit is that like, and I'm not fully consistent with it yet. I slipped up this morning, but I started out properly. I started journaling in the morning and reading, and I slipped up a couple times this week. And what I noticed was that like I had my my bag that has those things in my basement, and it was not there when I made my coffee. And I was just like, forget it. And so it was a lot easier when I had those things close by. And so like this morning, I did start out with my reading and taking a couple notes of thoughts that I just wanted to plug down before opening up my phone.
Got it. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
Great example of designing your environment in a way that supports you to do the habit rather than to miss it. Thank you, Josh. Jessica?
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I didn't mean to post that early, but you might see that I posted the activity tracker PDF there, which was made just last night. And this is after 10 months of being in 6 a.m.ers and attending Compass Academy and learning and listening to all of you. I found myself with a few different tracking mechanisms. I had my morning routine, client calls. Now I'm in GCI Accelerator, and I got a little nervous on the first day when I heard Chirag say that if we're complaining about not making our numbers, he's going to check our phone for the social time and everything. And I thought, okay, you know what? I need to really be taking notes, not only for that, but for myself. I need to be able to track my progress. So I created this little thing last night that it's a Google Sheet. I'm happy to send that link to anybody, but it has a morning routine that has been 10 months in the making. I have redone this morning routine so many times. And Josh, I want to echo that what was messing me up is I would get up and make the coffee. And that made me want to get on the couch and read. So I have on here now that I'm not allowed to have coffee until 6 a.m.ers. I start with wake, water, and walk. Of course, I stretch and make the bed in there somewhere too. But then I don't get that cup of Joe until 6 a.m. is when I'm sitting down and interacting. And so that is, I started a little 5 a.m.er group for those of us who want to get up and just walk and get that done with. So this is my new schedule. It has all these different things. It has 6 a.m. routine, business growth. This was on somewhere. This is a template somebody else made. I just dropped it in there. AEM boot camp is coming up. This is 9 to 9:30. These are all specific times. And I never had a specific time for stuff. I was just seating my pants. So I'm really excited for this. GCI Accelerator, 9:30 to 10, topic speaker, notes, update CRM, follow speaker, write thank you note, key takeaways, and action items. There's so many action items. And then all these client calls. So I just made that last night because of all of the learning I have here. Thank you.
So thank you, Jessica, and thank you for sharing a copy of it in the chat box there. Another good example of coming up with a system that allows you to be where you need to be at the right moment with whatever your habits are. There's so many little things you can do. For example, let's say that you want to do a better job of managing your CRM. What you can do the day before, the night before, is just jot down 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, the names that you need to update the next morning. Like, let's say that your habit is to get up, have your cup of coffee, and do your updates while you're drinking that first cup of coffee. Just jot the names down on a sticky the night before you go to bed, and then just put it on your laptop. And in the morning, you just get up, and there you go. You've got the 4 names that you need to update done, right? You've set it up in such an easy way for you to do it that it's almost impossible for you to not do it. Studies show that you need to do something approximately 66 times until it starts to become automatic. And this is another problem. I mean, this for another day, but we need to repeat something often enough until it becomes habitual to us. If you've got a different way of brushing your teeth, it takes a while to do that, or a different way of brushing your hair, or whatever it is. It takes a while to kind of become more comfortable with that than the way you were doing it before. But until that time, you want to make sure that you're making it as easy as possible for yourself to do it. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. You can see just from the stories here, the things that we do that are getting in the way of us being successful. Josh could lose X hours a day by just doing what he does on his phone. And you know what? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with having me time and being clear about what the me time is and what the work time is. But if we're not clear about what it is, or we're not clear about managing it, obviously we fritter that time away. And you add up all those hours over the course of the year, it could be the same thing. And the stories we heard from Ali and other people before, it's very easy to take ourselves away from the habits that help us build the systems and the processes that support our business. And so our work in this area is to really bring a critical eye to what are we actually doing on a daily basis, to understand what that is. And I guarantee there's low-hanging fruit for all of us. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect with everything for the rest of your life, but you could easily look at what you're doing and see little bits of pieces here and there that could help you kind of, you shift that, and that shifts your business. The CEO of, was it Rocket Mortgage? I think it was Rocket Mortgage. They have 18 principles for how they want to run their business. And one of those principles is the inches we need are all around us. And so he's encouraging everyone who works in his business to look for the little bit of low-hanging fruit around them and make a shift there, because you add all those things together and it changes the business. It's true for all of you in your businesses too, whether you work alone, whether you work with others. There's 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there or 30 minutes a week or something like that that we're not using as productively as we could or should, and we may not even be aware of it. So the first step is to use that tracking sheet, look at the instructions on it, and then just take 15, 20 minutes to write down the habits that are normal for you. And it's not just business habits, it could be any habits, but you'll want to, of course, focus on the habits that are related to the effectiveness of your business. Some of them may be personal habits, but anything that relates to the success of your business, you put that down first. You take a look at whether it's a plus or a minus for you, whether it's serving you to become the person you want to be, or serving your business to become the way you want it to be, or not. And then you can start thinking about how to change things. For some of you, that might mean an intentional implementation, right? About being very specific and clear what the habit needs to be, rather than just have like a dream, like I want to be better at the CRM or something. For some of you, it may mean designing your environment a little more effectively. Like Josh says, put something right on your desk rather than, where you'll see it, rather than downstairs, by the back door when you came in from the car and left it there and forgot all about it, right? There's so many things that you can do. And this is not work that you probably want to do all at once. It's something where you want to put one habit into place at a time. Establish one particular habit that you think would be more effective for your business and stick with it for 30 days and see how it works. If you can stick with it for 30 days and it helps, you've learned something, helps your business. If you stick with it for 30 days and it doesn't help, okay, maybe it wasn't the right choice, go to something else. But one habit at a time, built up over time, makes tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars difference in your business at the end of the year.
So David, can I
Yes.
just say something really quick? It's
Yep.
Helen. Yeah. In that 66 days, psychologists used to say it was like 30 days, to change a habit, to stop drinking, eating. And of course, like you said, it's 66 days at least. But, I have a habit of, I used to really beat myself up about like, oh, I didn't do that. Oh my gosh. And of course, I've gotten better at it over time. But one of the things I do is I say, simply resume. So like the next day, okay, let's say I didn't do it exactly how I wanted to do it yesterday. Then I say, okay, simply resume today, rather than like, oh, I wish I'd done that, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
and being in the past. So that has helped me.
Yeah,
And maybe it helps somebody else.
it's a good practice not to pile on. We call that piling on. When you made a mistake or something didn't go the way you wanted it to, especially if it was your fault, it's so easy to say, I'm so stupid. I'm so terrible at this. I'm such a jerk. I'm a worthless human being. I'll never be good at this, right? It's very easy to make those judgments, but they're not helpful at all. It's simply, it didn't happen yesterday, but those commercials for Evian, every day is another chance to do something healthy for your body or something like that. To paraphrase that, every day is a new chance to do something healthy for your business. And, we talk a lot in habits about not breaking the chain. And, once you get into it, whether you're running or eating healthy or whatever, you develop this desire not to break the chain. Occasionally you do. And you know what? Just start a new chain.
David,
Yes.
may I say, this is Marilda Fernandez.
Yes.
We had done at the beginning, I think at the end of the last year, the business plan for 2021. And
Yes.
there were several pages. And one of the last pages were section 14, the perfect day.
Yes.
I started doing that because I never did. So I did whatever I need to do, and I was hooked up on my emails. I had to do it. Now I have 700 emails that I didn't respond, but that's okay because I do my other things that are on the list, and they start at 5 a.m. and they finish 7. And every night I put it what I have to do the next day. And that really helped me. And I think really broke my habits that I didn't have. I start just putting wake up, brush your, exercise, take a shower, coffee, and then call. And so that helped me a lot. And so I think it's something simple that can help everybody else too.
Thank you, Marilda. It is a wonderful habit, a wonderfully effective habit for many to simply have something that they do the night before to be clear about what they need to do the next day. And for your business to succeed over the year, all it has to do is succeed each day. So you don't need to think about the whole year. All you need to think about is today. How can I make today a successful day for my business? And if that includes you planning something the night before so that you can get right into it today, great, you're serving your business. All right, everyone, we're a couple of minutes past. So thank you all for your input today. If you have some interest in going further into this, let me know. Send a message to me at David at Chirag Shah Coaching, or send a message to Chirag, and we'll put some more conversation around habits on the calendar in the future. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day and a great rest of the week.